Zelda.
Okay.
And I come into frame. Yes. Hello.
Hi. Okay. So it's funny because you and I had the same telepathic idea to post about.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about why you thought to post this about bent arm strength.
I bent arm, and basically mine is really just about like push. And I talk about how even though my arms look straight because I'm hyperextended, there is a slight release, which means that I really am in bent arm. And I
Right.
do talk about how it's translatable into arm balances and inversions in general.
Right.
I think really because when I'm teaching all the time, I talk about these concepts consistently. And I realize that, whenever I post a video or I post like a crazy transition that I do on Instagram, and people are like, how do you do that? Or how do I find stability? And I find it so hard to just quantify everything into just um, one explanation.
Yeah.
But the explanation and the concept of what that push is and how to get into that shoulder position, that scapular position, I feel is completely translatable to everything. And I talk about how it starts from being able to find that crow position with the upper body. It translates to everything. Like when you want to do a press, when you want to do handstand to seated, when you come down, letting the legs come through is the same position with the shoulders and everything. So
Yeah.
that's mine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yours is a little bit more practical, and the reason why you posted it, and it is translatable because I think that what people really are missing in terms of being able to do some of those transitions where you maybe lower down or come back up or vice versa is that they're lacking muscle engagement. So if you're coming from a background of handstanding where your handstand coach or teachers or whatever have been telling you to lock your elbows, when you lock a joint, it basically allows your muscles to relax. And so what you're relying on is you're relying on structural alignment, you're relying on the bone tower, which means that you can do a handstand, but that's all you can do. You're not going to be able to come up and down quite as easily. You can if you have immense serratus strength. I mean, but that's years and years of training, which you may never ever tap into if you don't allow your elbows to bend. So I think that's really interesting. The reason why I posted about the bent arm strength is because I think that people misuse the terminology. And so I wanted to be clear that when you're in a handstand with a bent arm, that you're actually, what you're lacking isn't bent arm strength, bending the ability to bend your elbow. It's actually the ability to move towards straight. So it's actually a pushing exercise, not a bending your elbow, not a pulling exercise, but a straightening your elbow pushing exercise. So I wanted to distinguish between the two.
I've been trying this concept. So my video was about how it's 3 steps. So it's lat engagement to get scapula depressed. And then it's pushing through the heel of the hand or base of the palm, as I call it, which translates to where your elbow is positioned over your hand.
Right.
And the last one would be your magic cue, which I loved from the workshop, which was squeeze an imaginary block between the elbows.
Right.
And I've been trying that with the last few classes I've been teaching, and it's been working. It really has been like, I always teach the same concepts, but to actually have it broken down into just these 3 things that people can think about and check on their cue as they're going through the motion, and having them hold it either in, like an isometric or just kind of moving front and back through a plank and trying not to let the back collapse, the chest collapse, and just maintaining that push all the way or getting the shoulders to shrug up to the ears.
Right.
That actually really helped a lot of the people last weekend when I was teaching to actually feel like a big difference in the way that they were pushing. Did it translate to immediately getting the skills and the drills that they wanted? No. Some of them, yes. But did it give them a different sensation of what that push feels like? And did they feel like a lot more strength? Yes. like across the board.
Well, that's where it starts, is the sensation. Do you feel strong? Do you
Exactly.
feel stable? And so I think that brings me to sort of another thought, which is that there are so many people that I work with either directly or indirectly that want a really advanced skill, yet now I'm being totally general when I say this, but anybody who wants an advanced skill, I'm going to look at, well, can you hold your scapula position in down dog? I mean, can you hold your scapular position in a pike push-up? Can you hold your scapular position in a plank? Are you even thinking about it in the really accessible movements? Not that pike push-ups are easy, but you know what I mean. It's much more accessible to be able to do that than it is to say, I don't know, do a crow press for many people. And if you're not able to maintain your scapula protraction in something like down dog, you're not even thinking about it. What makes you think that it's going to show up magically when you want to do your press? It has to be there, and it has to be from the beginning in the simple stuff across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be very honest, I'm someone before I started training with you, I came from a super straight arm, locked out. And I'm not saying that it doesn't work. And this is something I say constantly in class. It's a different method, but the method that you teach is really to be able to transition between the two,
Right.
right? To be able to go from bent arm to straight arm. And like you said, there are people who can do it with straight arms, and it's years and years of practice, and they have immense amount of strength. Like I cannot explain how difficult it is to go into these things with straight arm. And I remember there was once I used to be able to do handstand to crow with a strap, and I took the strap off. This was before you. And I was in a super straight arm, and then I dropped into the crow, and I hurt my shoulder and my elbow,
Right.
and I was out for like 3 months, right? And
Right.
then I started with you, and it just started making so much more sense why I got injured, because it shifted our position. Then the impact that I landed with kind of like strained whatever I was using, right? So rotator cuff was whack, elbow was whack. Um, but I gig 5 nights a week carrying this damn guitar on my shoulder. It's so tight.
Right.
And yet I still can do pretty much what I want to do, with the same concept. Like you said, if you're trying to get the press or you're trying to get the skill, you need to be able to do it tired on a good day, on a bad day.
Right.
And because I've been training with you so long, these concepts still stay with me, even on a bad day, even on a tired day, right? It's crazy. It really works.
Yeah, and the key I think is that when you do have bad days, that the technique doesn't change. You're staying with the same technique and
Mm-hmm.
maybe not training the most complicated exercise and setting yourself up for failure. Go back, scale back, do the simple stuff, work on technique, exaggerate the muscle engagement, exaggerate the position, and then on your better days, or maybe just if you've trained 10 press ups or 10 movements, maybe your last one or your last two will be that complicated movement. But you can't try to train the hard thing over and over and over and over again and feel like you're getting nowhere. You have to scale. You have to be able to move in and out of, how you're approaching your training a little bit. So anyway, that's that.
It really has to start from the basics.
Yeah.
Even for myself, like, yeah, when I'm teaching and I'm teaching just the basics of how the movement patterns should be, and just talking about it and feel it in my body, that's all the warm up I need, by the way. Like honestly, I can do crazy things
Yeah.
just from talking about it. No, but that's my learning style, right? My learning style is visualizing and and feeling it within my body before I actually go into it. The
Yeah.
mental rehearsal.
Right.
But yeah, but honestly, it's crazy to me that there are days when, because my schedule is so crazy, I run in from a show and I teach a class, and I obviously didn't have time to practice or warm up before. But because as I'm teaching the actions and talking about it, suddenly when I put my hands on the floor, boom, it's
Yeah.
like I've been training for like the last 2 hours. So what you said about, like exaggerating the engagement, that actually really is a thing. And doing it in something as simple as tabletop.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
I tried it. Yeah, it works.
It works. And a lot of times, like, people feel like they're not, I'm guessing, I'm projecting maybe a little bit, no, going back to like my younger self, where there's like this thought that if you don't go all out and do the hardest thing all the time, that you're not really doing it. But actually, the more important work is stuff that you can't really see. It's getting the simple stuff and getting the feeling, and like you said, feeling as though you're doing the hardest thing when you're either not doing anything at all, you're just visualizing it, you're just mentally preparing, or when you're doing the simplest thing, like just doing plank, doing tabletop, and imagine holding all of your body weight in your hands. One of the things I used to share with people, and I'll share it now, is like, I remember one time I was practicing and it was a Mysore style, and I was still practicing Ashtanga. And there was a woman, there was no room in the shala, and there was a woman who lay down to do her shavasana or whatever right in front of me. And she happened to be pregnant. So there was like this woman with like this belly right in front of me. And so that turned my attention on so much, where I was like, oh my God, I am not going to fall over or fall on top of this woman. And it, like, that's what it's like. It's like, practice as if there's like a pregnant woman lying down in front of you, and you don't want to fall on top of that person. Not only do you not want to fall on top of yourself or fall on your face, but like, you have to practice with that sort of intention every time, every movement, if you want to be able to stand on your hands consistently, because it's not normal to stand on your hands. You have to pay attention to what you're doing. So,
In your world, it's a pregnant woman. Mine is Elba, your
oh,
assistant coach.
it's a very real, yeah, that's a very real example. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it was because I had been training with you for so long and getting the movement patterns in. I didn't realize that I could actually not look while I was handstanding with him because he's constantly rubbing across my face and I have to move my head out of the way, but everything else stayed
Right.
solid. And I was like, wow, this is a party trick right here. I'm not even looking.
Right.
I'm not. Yeah, it's crazy. But I think the biggest thing, like you were saying, start with the simple things. I think the most important thing for people to understand is you need to be able to keep it solid and consistent from the ground because once the momentum of jumping into it comes in, it's very hard to bring that awareness into the upper body. Like everything goes out of whack. You can't tell what's left, what's right. You don't know your name anymore. So yeah, doing it from the ground first. And I like having it be set from tabletop and then coming up to down dog and still trying to find that position, then leaning through that front and back and finding where that line is where if you tip over too far, you lose the engagement.
Right.
Like when the shoulders or the elbows rather come too far forward, the
Yeah.
shoulders can come forward, but the elbows can stay, right? And that really to me is
Which is,
sort of,
that's bending your arms. That's bending your
yes,
elbows. Yes, your shoulders
I was
can
just,
go
yeah,
forward, but your elbows better be right over the heel of your hand the entire time.
correct. And I think that a lot of people struggle with that because, again, they understand that you need to keep the shoulders back. But once they lean and the elbows move, it goes into this. So, honestly, that cue that you used when you said it, I was like, "Oh, still learning so much." Squeezing the block in between the elbows. That really helps because it helps you keep that position here
Yeah.
rather than if you lean forward, it goes into like a full extension. Look at that. Come on.
Yeah.
This is terrible. So, yeah,
Where's
I
the
know,
mic?
right?
Yeah.
It's both sides. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it saved me so much pain. It saved
Good.
me so much trouble.
Also, I will say, like, the people, we can probably end it shortly here, but I will say that the people who are really hell bent on locking their elbows or saying, like, that is the superior way versus bent arm. I would just say it's like you said, it's just a way. It's not the right way, it's not the wrong way. And it just depends on kind of what school you're coming from. Obviously, if you're in a gymnast or circus training type background and you're on your hands doing really hard stuff for a very long period of time, there are benefits to locking your elbows because you don't have to be engaging in the same way for the same amount of time. So there are benefits. I'm not saying there's not, but I'm saying sustainability and versatility. The margin of error grows so much if you know that you're not locked in position, that you can bend, you can move, you don't just have this between your fingers in your hand to correct. You also have this. You can, if you under jump, you can push a little bit straighter and get yourself into the vertical. If you over jump, you can bend a little bit and get yourself back to center. So you have more to move than just what's going on with your hands. You have your hands, you have your elbows, you have your shoulders. You can change your position. In that, there's so much more versatility where you can just say, well, I can correct myself and I'm not going to like come crashing down because I'm so rigid that that's the only option, right?
And here's a really interesting thing. For me, the scapular position that you teach, that I learned from you, and then I now translate into gym work is the scapular position for the pull. And
Yeah,
the push for me is very similar. The only difference is whether you're in protraction or not. But that position you're in is, for me, is exactly the same.
it
And
is.
it translates into everything.
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same. The only difference is where is the resistance? What side
Yes.
of the resistance are you on? Are you pulling it towards you or are you pushing it away from you? The scapular movement, the pattern between a push and a pull, it's exactly the same. Overhead pulling, overhead pushing, handstand push-ups or pull-ups. Same, same scapular movement involved.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So interesting. Good stuff. Thanks, Sarah.
Quickest call in the world.
And very useful.
Yes.
All
Thank you. I'm
right.
so glad you got your voice back.
I know, me too. All right. See you next time.